friends, welcome to Liseybelle Laine. My name is Elise and I'm really excited to welcome you here into this space that we're creating together, where we're learning how to make, learn, and grow in all things, but mostly in crafting. So today, I don't really know what has gotten into me, but what I have decided to do is try to gather in one place and evaluate all of the knitting works in progress that I have in my house right now. So in the knitting world, works in progress is often abbreviated as WIPs, W-I-P-S, works in progress. And so if you hear me say WIPs, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like Indiana Jones, whoosh. So yeah, but I think there are probably a frightening number of projects, and I'm going to go over them all with you today. And we'll find out what I have hidden away in all of the drawers and baskets and nooks around the house. So see you back here in a second. Okay, so I was gonna go grab everything and make a really big pile of all of my projects, but then I was afraid that I was already getting really overwhelmed at that idea. So I think instead I'm gonna take it by zone where things are, and we'll just go through what I have in that area, which then I won't be talking about all of the socks and sweaters together. Like it won't be like socks and then sweaters, but it'll be easier for me to manage. So I'm going to angle you over. There are some shelves hanging up here, and I'm going to start with what we have here beside me in baskets and up on the shelves, as well as what I was currently knitting on earlier today. So here we go. First up, we have the basket that was on the top of the highest shelf, which means this is probably the one I have stashed furthest away, because I least want to think about it. So I've got it in this project bag here, and I know what's in here. Lots of knitting needles. And I'll show you this is the yarn that I'm using for this project. It is from Hobby, which I think is in Denmark. And this is a 40% tencel lyocell and then 60% bamboo viscose. So this is a fully plant-based fiber. They're tencel bamboo fine. And it's somewhere between a lace and a fingering. It's pretty light, it's pretty thin. Yeah, so it's pretty thin, and you can see it's got a really lovely shine to it, and it's this pretty mauve color. So this project, I knit my swatch like a good knitter, and you can see it's really crinkly because it's been in the bottom of the bag this whole time. If you're not a knitter, the reason that you knit a tiny square, and maybe even if you are a knitter and you don't know this, you knit a tiny square before you start to make sure that you're making a fabric that you like how it feels, and then that fabric matches your pattern so that whatever you make will fit you when you're done. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, this is my swatch. And then what I am knitting is the Bowie blouse by Lisa Richardson. This is what the pattern looks like, and you can't really see how intricate the lace sleeve is, but you'll see on mine. I have knit so far about half of this blouse. So I have knit the back piece, which is also very crinkly and it's very curly. So this will it will flatten out once it's ready to be worn. I'm worried I'm not this size anymore, which doesn't help with wanting to finish the project. But I knit the back piece first. And it's, as you can see, really thin and drapey and beautifully shiny. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Then I moved on to what is probably one of the most challenging pieces of knitting I have ever worked on in my life. So this is the sleeve. This is one sleeve, and it's not done. I've been on this one sleeve for, I want to say, 2 years. Not terrible in the grand scheme, but it's a long time. I really should pick it up and finish it because it's really beautiful. So the way that this goes is it's basically you knit out this triangle. So I started up here with very few stitches, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more and more and more stitches until I reached this lace border. And then it is knitted back and forth this way. So the shawl was knitted around the triangle. And then I got to the bottom edge and turned it so that it's not going around the triangle anymore, it's going back and forth. I hope that makes sense. If not, don't worry about it. It's a Shetland lace applied border, basically, knit in garter stitch. And oh boy, did it take me a long time to get the hang of it. I was not doing a very good job at reading my lace stitches and garter, but I think I figured it out. It just is very time consuming. I thought once I finished this block that the edging would take no time at all, and I was so wrong. The edging is like well over half of the sleeve, and I'm at the very end. I'm really, really close to finishing it, and part of why I haven't finished this sleeve is because I'm afraid that I will forget what needle I was using, and I'll do the second sleeve wrong. So I'm keeping the needle in the sleeve until I'm ready to finish this one and start the second one. And I just haven't quite mustered that motivation yet. So the way that the sleeve goes is it will fit here, and then these edge pieces will attach under the arm. So it'll be a really big, flouncy sleeve, and it'll get a little bit bigger and more open once I wash it and stretch it out. But isn't that lovely? Oh, okay, I'm excited for this top again. That makes me want to finish. The lace pattern for the leafy part of the shawl up here, the instructions are only written and not charted. So that made it a little bit more challenging to follow as well, to keep up with where I was. I'm hoping the second sleeve won't be as bad. Like I said, I'm also a little bit worried that my size has changed since I was last working on this, but I actually really like this project bag and I kind of miss it. So maybe I should do something to make sure it's not just tied up, stashed away on a really high shelf. So this is one of my oldest works in progress. The Bowie by Lisa Richardson in bamboo tencel fine. Back in its basket. And I'm going to stick it back up on its shelf and come back with the next project. All right, we're back with basket number 2 from the middle shelf. Good news I'm noticing right away is that I have empty bags on top, which means there are not as many things as I thought there were going to be in this basket, which is really, really nice. And I can use these bags. That would be good. Okay, so this is a little shawlette. Oh, I'm happy with that. So this is, I think this is probably how I would wear it, is around my neck. It is a little scratchy for next to skin wear. I made this yarn myself. This is hand-spun on my Ashford traditional spinning wheel. And I spun it from, I think, a multicolored Romney. Is it Romney? I think it's Romney. It was a shave 'em to save 'em qualifying wool, so I should pull out the label. I definitely have it somewhere. I'll see if I can get that information for you. So I bought this at the Oklahoma Mini Mill booth at Fiber Christmas in July in 2021. So I went to Fiber Christmas in July and bought a whole bunch of things, most of which I have not spun yet because I'm stuck on this other work in progress that's on my spinning wheel right now. But this one was just a little 4-ounce bump, and I loved the way the colors faded. And I was really inspired by Marce from Hey Brown Berry. She knit a shawl in natural sheep colors. It was a Stephen West shawl, I think. And it legitimately looked like it was in grayscale. When she held it up to the camera, it looked like it was in black and white. And I thought it was so beautiful. And when I saw this wool, it was all I could think of. And so it spun up kind of woolen and pretty chunky. And I think I chain-plied it. So yes, I chain-plied it to keep the sort of like transition of color. And I basically just spun it off the bump. So this was how it was arranged in the bump, was mostly dark gray. It started off a little bit paler up here, which you can't really see because the light's shining on it. Yeah, maybe that shows you. And then it gets a little darker, turns into this really deep, rich, chocolatey brown, and then up to medium gray, light gray, back to medium gray, back to chocolate. And I purchased the same Stephen West shawl pattern, but the yarn that I had was way chunkier. I think the shawl called for fingering weight, and I was working with which fingering weight for non-knitters is thin. It's like what socks would be knit out of, or like this sweater is knit out of fingering weight. So it's a really thin fabric. This is a really thick, chunky fabric by comparison. So I was working with probably like an Aran or even a little bit thicker. And I only had 4 ounces. And it was hand spun. So I had no sense for like what my real yardage was. So I ended up altering the pattern pretty substantially to keep the center. This is called Feather and Fan or Old Shale lace pattern. It's a really old traditional pattern. So keeping that down the center and then making sure there was a border that had an odd number of the little flares. And I actually like barely squeezed it out. And the reason that this isn't finished is because it's blocked. I washed it, I soaked it, I pinned it out to dry, and I didn't finish it because I bound off along this bottom edge in a nice stretchy lace bind off to follow all of these beautiful curves. So the final edge of my knitting, sometimes with shawls, it ends up a little bit too tight. And so it like rolls up around your neck or doesn't stretch and show the pattern how it's supposed to. So I had enough yarn, and to make it stretchy, it takes extra yarn. So I had enough yarn to do that all the way along the edge, this whole edge. And then I got to the last 5 inches and I ran out of yarn. So I sort of fudged it. And this last little bit on the tip is not nearly as stretchy. I don't know if you can see, that doesn't really give very much, whereas this over here has a lot more stretch to it. Which probably doesn't matter, but dealing with like finishing this very edge, and that's part of why I went ahead and washed it, was to see if it was going to be okay. And it is okay. I wish I had enough to just like finish it properly, but it's hand spun. I don't have any more of this yarn. I can't just buy more of this yarn. I don't know even if you gave me the fiber today if I could spin it. So another way you can wear something like this is sort of draped around your shoulders as a little shawlette. And the rustic nature of this one makes me feel like I just belong in a historical period piece, like on the moors somewhere, bundled up from the cold. But this one is a really, really quick finish. So maybe pulling it out and showing you today will be enough to motivate me to weave in those last few ends. What do you think? You guys gonna hold me accountable to getting this done? All right, and then the other thing we have in this basket is another shawl. So this one, I was able to get this Mirasol Nuna, which is the Quechua word for soul or spirit. It is 40% wool, 40% silk, and 20% viscose, which is that like shiny plant fiber, just like the Bowie with the lace sleeve. So this one is, it is so soft. It is like, it just feels like a dream. And this is the kind of yarn that I would go into the yarn store and like hug and touch and look at and think, maybe someday I can afford that kind of yarn. And then unfortunately, my local yarn shop was going out of business. And so there were quite a few sales leading up to the closing of that store. And I kind of scooped up a bunch of yarns that I normally wouldn't splurge on. So this is one of those yarns that I would not have been able to afford at full price, but got in the closing sale at my local yarn shop. Then I realized I wasn't going to have enough because these are only 50-gram skeins. And it is 191 yards, 175 meters to 50 grams. So most of the shawls I was looking at were more like 400 yards, and this is like more like a sport than a fingering. So I ordered a second batch online, which looked gray to me, and came in very, very blue. So I overdyed the blue, this charcoal gray. And I thought these would make a really pretty neutral shawl together. And I just had this vision of like it being really beaded and spectacular. And it's just, it's okay. It's not bad, but I'm not over the moon about it. So that's where these needles are. So this is the shawl in progress. And what I tried to do was a sort of gradient of beads, which you really can't see at all in the light, but it starts with silvers and bright golds and fades down into coppers and sort of pewter colors. And then the top of each of the little diamonds down here is a copper or dark gold, and then the bottom is the pewter. And there's nothing wrong with this project. I do think it looks nice, and I would probably enjoy wearing it, and maybe I should finish it. But I was just feeling kind of underwhelmed, especially for how excited I had been to use this yarn. And maybe in another episode when I show you the shawls that I've finished that are this kind of lace knitting, you'll see what I mean about this one being a little bit underwhelming. It just didn't come out how I was envisioning it. So I think I might, and this is why it's in the basket on a shelf hidden away. I think I'm gonna rip this out. I'm gonna unknit this, which is a little heartbreaking. And sometimes I talk to friends, especially friends who aren't knitters, and they're like, well, why would you rip out all that work? I'm like, well, why would I keep all that work if I'm not gonna use it or wear it? Like, the whole point of putting all the work into it is so that I'll have an object I'm really excited to have at the end. And I'm not that excited to have this object. I just feel sort of meh about it. So I think I know what I need to do, but I don't know what else I want to do with this yarn yet. So it can happily wait in the basket until I come back around to it again. But I think it has to get undone. Because it's just okay. It's not phenomenal. Just such a bummer. But hey, I have way more room in this basket than I thought I did. Okay, I'm going to show a recently finished item. Which I knit with this yarn. Let me grab the tag. This is called Belviso. And it is 60% cotton, 28% linen, and 12% nettle fibers, which nettle fibers are a lot like linen. So this is all plant-based, and the cotton and the linen and the nettle fibers means that it would be very cooling and comfortable to wear in the hot summer. And this summer in Oklahoma it was really hot, so I was really craving something that was going to be a good fit for cold weather knitting. So what I knit was a tank top. It is the Outline Tank by Jessie Maed Designs. And it doesn't fit. Wah wah. It's way too big, especially under the arms. But even if I took some of that out, the middle it's really big, like the whole thing. And it was a lot of knitting. Like, tank top is nice because it doesn't have sleeves, but it was still a lot of knitting because it's a really thin yarn. And I like the fabric that it made. I think it's pretty cool, but I'm not gonna wear this. And I just finished it a few weeks ago, and I really worked pretty hard to get it done so that I could wear it in the heat of the summer. And then it didn't fit. So I washed it and blocked it to see if that would help with the shape of it at all and if I could stretch it to be longer. And really there's nothing I can do. Yeah, so I was trying to decide if it was worth, I've got all the like loose ends still to weave in. I was trying to decide if it was worth weaving those in so that I could wear it even though it's oversized this summer. Maybe tucked into a cropped something, I don't know, or a high-waisted jean. But that feels like a lot of work for something that I know I'm ultimately going to rip out. And I also wasn't happy with, so on one side, this dropped stitch texture came out really flat. And on the other side, it like puckers and curls. And I think maybe the yarn just wasn't very forgiving for that. You can see it here. This one is really smooth. This one puckers and curls. And it's one of each side. So, I don't know. This one's also going to get ripped out whenever I muster up the courage to do so. Put all my bags back in the basket and put my basket back. We're doing good. Okay, I have a bigger basket now that I think is not going to go great for me. I can already tell there's random, like, I thought I was going to knit something, so I started knitting a sample, and I really didn't like the sample. So I ripped it, like I pulled it off the needles, but it's a sample and I don't want to not know about what I learned from it, because what if I try to knit this thing again? So I kept it, but it's literally nothing. I should throw it away. Next are, I stole the needle out of these. That's kind of surprising. I guess I decided I wasn't going to keep going with this sock, which I don't remember deciding, but it looks really nice on camera. Like, you can see the leaf pattern. In person, it's a lot more obscured because of the colors in the yarn. So it's this yarn and then this gray together. And because this has lighter yellow and white sections in it, it gets really hard in places to tell the difference between that and the gray, which the camera is doing a much better job picking up than the eye does. So on camera, I'm like, yeah, those are funky and cool, and I would totally wear those. In person, I'm like, they're not amazing. They're not horrible, they're not amazing. And I guess I needed the needle for something else. So in a short twisted rib, the leafy pattern, and then the bottom of the sock is just 1x1 colorwork checker, which I actually liked the way it looked in the checker better. And I think I did Mina Phillips German short row heel with a mini heel flap adjustment and stockinette stitch, which is pretty much my preferred heel for myself. So I guess I could always pick it back up again if I decide that I want to. Oh, no, you know what? I know what happened. I took this with me when I went to visit my grandma. And we were chatting and I was knitting, and my gauge changed pretty drastically between the leg and the foot. And I like settled into the pattern or something. And so I needed to frog it at least back to the, basically like the heel. And then I did need the needle for something else, so I just pulled it out because I didn't want to deal with the frogging. Are we sensing a theme yet? I think we are. This gray is Regia 4-ply. Color 02070, just sort of a warm gray. And then I've lost the label for this one, but I want to say, I don't think it's Regia. I think it's, I don't know what this is. It's another regular sock yarn, not hand-dyed, commercial sock yarn. Okay, next up we have a sample sock that I started on, which is just for me. And this is in Berroco Vintage DK, which is a wool acrylic nylon blend, I want to say. Maybe just wool acrylic blend. And the reason that I was knitting this sock in particular was that I was sampling for a commission that I got for Christmas socks. And this is a DK weight yarn. Usually socks are knit in a fingering weight, which I can try to show you the difference. So can you see how thin this yarn is? And then the DK weight is like, well, it also kind of looks, it's like twice as thick. I don't know if you're able to see that, but it's quite a bit thicker. And so it knits up more quickly. And I got a commission for several pairs of socks for Christmas gifts and wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do it if it was all in this like thinner yarn. And so I was testing to make sure that I liked the sock that came out of this yarn and the gauge that I was getting, which I think this might be what I stole those needles for. This is a US size 1, which is really small for DK weight yarn, but I'm a very loose knitter, so I usually need a much smaller needle size than average. But it came out like pretty solid, and I felt like a little bit looser gauge for the commission socks would be good, especially because they're for bigger sizes. So it worked okay for me. I learned what I needed to learn from it, which is that I do like this for socks and that I needed to buy another needle because I didn't have a bigger one. Sorry, I'm like shoving this at the camera. And then I got distracted and put it away. It was too hot to wear socks anyway. I was just figuring out my life. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is the last one for this basket. And it is knit out of some unnamed wool. It's probably either Patton's worsted or is it Lion Brand Fisherman's wool. basically 100% wool yarn that's a little bit rough that you can buy at a Michael's or Joann or Hobby Lobby type store that I dyed myself at home when I was learning. And then it's also knit with wool of the Andes, worsted, non-superwash, 100% Peruvian Highland wool in the color Cilantro Heather. Now, this hand-dyed yarn I dyed as a gradient fade. And I had this vision of how I wanted it to look in the sweater and what sweater I wanted to knit. And you can see the gradient, hopefully you can see the gradient, fades from this like aqua color and then all the way through to the sort of purpley gray color, which is kind of what we're ending with here. Now, I really like how this worked up overall, but this part of the sweater is way too deep for me. I am quite shallow from my collarbone to my armpit, and this is probably like a third as long as it needs to be, at least. And this top part of the sweater came out pretty dense, and I feel like I could get away with it being long here if it was like flexible, but it's very rigid. So like I raise my arms and the whole sweater comes with it. It was a lot of work to get this far in this sweater to realize I have to rip it out. Okay, so I'm sensing a theme, which is that I don't actually have as many works in progress as I think I do, because most of them I'm going to rip out. Maybe I need to just have like a big rip out party. But part of it is like I might modify this chart and reknit it so that I can get the same effect, but in a way that's going to fit me. Like I could split for the sleeves. But see, I keep thinking about that. I could create the sleeve higher up. But because this yarn is a gradient, if I do that, instead of knitting around the whole top and slowly fading, I would knit around the body, progress through the gradient so it gets darker, darker. Then I would join back up on the sleeve with a darker color than where I was, and darker, darker, darker. And then on the next sleeve, it's going to be even darker. So there's going to be like a weird mismatch in the pattern there. So I don't want to split for the sleeves earlier. I had thought about taking rows out of the chart, which I might do, but then I won't get through as much of the color. Don't know. It's tough. Yeah, I'm stumped by this one because I like the idea and the effect that I'm getting, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to wear it as it is. And I did already wash and block it to just see if this would get any like drapier. And I love these colors together. I'm really happy with the color choice. It's a really fun sweater. Maybe get a little less window. There, you can kind of see the gradient better. Can you? I can't tell. So I'm really happy with the effect I was getting, but not the sweater itself. But I took all the needles off the sleeve and I don't even know what size I was knitting with anymore. So it's pretty decidedly going to be frogged. I'm wondering if I could like rescue the body and then graft it back on. That's an idea. Hey, that's an idea. Now you're thinking, Elise. I don't know. We're going to see. Probably will require sweater surgery, which is never fun. So back in the basket it goes. This is kind of discouraging. I mean, I'm not like super bummed. There are some things I'm excited to get back to, like that Bowie top and all kinds of things. Right now I'm kind of in the middle of a lot of commissions. So we've made it through the shelf. and I've got low battery, so I'm gonna charge up before I come back and keep going with these projects. See you soon.